Introduction to Nintendo Switch, which is Nintendo's current game console. So as Nintendo, our goal is really to give you a basic understanding about the platform, its capabilities, and tools that are available. Thousand employees all the way to one. So we do not make a difference, and we don't look at the brand because what we're concerned about really is what you're bringing to the platform. So all we're interested in really are about games. So we value creativity and passion for our video games. So I guess for Nintendo, this is the only line of business. We do not have any electronics arms. We do not have any other line of business. But for Nintendo, video games is all we do. So this is really important to us. And our company motto really is to bring smiles on people's faces. And this is not just developers, this is not just consumers, but everybody who are involved in releasing games through Nintendo, we would like them to be happy by doing so. And that could be developers, publishers, business people, retail people, and of course, the game players. So we just want to make everybody happy, and that's really our goal. So just quickly to break the ice, I guess. I'll do a bit of fun. So some of you die-hard fans may know this already. So keep it quiet if you already know this. When was Nintendo established? So this is a nice question to have, really. So, raise your hands if you think it's 1889. And raise your hands if you think it's 1947. And raise your hands if you think it's 1974. Okay, good mix, good mix. The answer is actually 1889. And that does take everybody by surprise because actually Nintendo was first established in Kyoto in Japan in 1889. Unfortunately, this headquarters doesn't exist anymore. It's 130 years, it's all wooden, and it's been rebuilt, so it doesn't exist anymore. But the spirit lives on, and now we look a bit different in terms of offices. So we have 3 major offices in the world. One in Redmond, in Washington State, Nintendo of America Inc. And then we have another headquarters in Kyoto, which is Nintendo Company Limited. And then where I'm from, which is in Frankfurt, Nintendo of Europe GmbH. So these 3 offices kind of comprise the global Nintendo at the moment. So, that was probably a bit too easy, and I think some of you already knew this, so I'm going to give you another one. So, in 1889, what did Nintendo make? What was the merchandise in 1889? So, raise your hand if you think it's Game & Watch. And raise your hand if you think it's playing card. And raise your hand if you think it's Game Boy. Okay, so it was a playing card. It wasn't the conventional Western playing card that we all know, but it's actually something called Hanafuda, which was a popular piece of entertainment that got popularized in Japan in late 1700s, and that's what Nintendo started making. So obviously these ones are modern design using Mario, but the original ones that Nintendo made in 1889 were of the traditional motif and pictures. But this is kind of the roots of Nintendo. And so since 1889, it's always been about entertainment, and this is not going to change for us. That's all we care about. So quickly moving on to the new stuff. I mean, what is Nintendo Switch? And I think Hopefully, most of you know this by now, but I will quickly go through the basics of Nintendo Switch. So Nintendo Switch, of course, it's a video game console. It can be used like a traditional video game console that's connected to your TV. And we call this TV mode. Every Nintendo Switch comes with a, well, with the exception of Nintendo Lite, comes with a dock and with two controllers that can be detached. And you can combine the Joy-Con and use them like a normal game controller, or you can use them as a kind of a remote control slash gyro controller. And then we have the handheld mode, which is probably the most popular way people use them. And roughly speaking, from what we can see, more than 50% of owners of Nintendo Switch prefer the portable mode, the handheld mode, and that's what they do. So this is exactly the same as docked, except that, of course, you have your own screen, and you can take it anywhere and play it anywhere you want. And then the third mode is really the tabletop mode. Nintendo Switch comes with a kickstand on its back, and then you can just lean it against the kickstand and put it on table and play it with the Joy-Con. So it's a very multi-purpose console that we have here. So again, it's play anytime, anywhere, with anyone. That's the concept of Nintendo Switch, and we wanted to make this a ubiquitous game console where you can take it anywhere. So at the moment, the Nintendo Switch family has 3 different models. So we have the Nintendo Switch. This is the one that came first. So we call this the flagship model. And then we have Nintendo Switch Lite, which comes in various colors. It's much lighter. It actually has better battery life, I think. And we have Nintendo Switch OLED model, which is the latest edition, which has a stunning screen that comes with the organic LED screen. So Nintendo Switch was launched in March 2017. So that kind of takes us now over 5.5 years in the market. And it was simultaneously launched around the world in Japan, Europe, Australia, Americas. And it has now sold 111 million units to date. So this makes Nintendo Switch one of the most successful video game consoles in Nintendo's history. So, good thing. And this is just a quick breakdown of where those units are. So 39% of the 111 million units I just mentioned are sold in the Americas. So that obviously includes North America, the US, Canada, Mexico, and the Latin America. And then 23% of the units have sold in Japan. And then 26% of the units are found in Europe collectively. And then the other 12% varies from China to Asia, like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, and other areas. So just to quickly recap over kind of, sorry, the games people play on Nintendo Switch. And of course, people play a lot of Nintendo games. I think that's one of the unique selling points about a Nintendo console, that it's basically the only platform where you can play Nintendo games. I mean, it sounds obvious, but that actually is really one of the strong points of Nintendo platform. So it could be Pokemon, it could be Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong, you name it. Anything that is developed by Nintendo or published by Nintendo will obviously only release on Nintendo console. And this, again, isn't going to change. This is one of the main pillars of our business. So this is something that we're going to keep on doing, and it works. And of course, historically, Nintendo games have been very strong on Nintendo platforms. And I think in some of the previous iterations of our console, especially from publishers and developers' point of view, there were some criticism against us in that they thought Nintendo platform was really only there to sell Nintendo games and not so much third-party video games. So, you know, that's something we definitely wanted to change. And I think Nintendo Switch has really achieved that. I can tell you that more than the majority of video games we currently sell on Nintendo eShop are not from Nintendo, but are partner publishers. So our kind of line of business is really shifting from just selling Nintendo games on Nintendo platform, but really it's all about selling games that Nintendo cannot or won't bring to the platform. So we have all sorts of games now, includes Diablo, Rayman, Minecraft, Dark Souls, Doom, Civilization, even Witcher 3, you name it. So all of these games are now playable on Nintendo Switch. And this is something that really differentiates Nintendo Switch from the previous consoles we've had, such as Wii or Wii U or DS, where you couldn't really find these kind of famous games on those platforms. But now on Switch, they're all there, and this isn't going to change, and they will keep on coming, which is great, absolutely great. But this is also a kind of a kudos from the publishers and partners that we work with, because for them, they feel that Nintendo Switch is a easier platform to work with, and they feel that it makes business sense that their titles are released on Nintendo platform as well. So this is, again, something that's really new to us for Nintendo Switch that we hadn't really experienced before in our previous consoles. And of course, it's not all about big AAA publishing titles, but actually one of our main pillars nowadays is really indie titles. And that's really our big focus now. And I think it's probably safe to say that we have established a corner in the industry as the go-to console for indie titles. And we have incredible support from all sorts of developers across the world. And we have a showcase, actually, which is dedicated to indie titles called Indie World. And we have a few of these in parallel to the famous Nintendo Direct that we also do. But Indie World is different in a way that it's specialized just for indie content. We do not show Nintendo titles or titles that we deem a bit too large, too corporate. So this is really dedicated for the indie industry. And some of them, well, actually all of them really are really successful. The one we showed in April in 21 reached over 10 million views on YouTube, but other iterations are also doing just as well. So this is really a key driver for us at the moment. And also, of course, we do actually have some free-to-play titles available on Switch as well. So, you know, I guess Fortnite, Apex, Rocket League, you know, all these famous brands. Fall Guys, also another very successful title as a free-to-play title. And Overwatch 2 just launched as well on Switch, and that's doing really, really well as well. So we have free-to-play as well. So we're really kind of reaching out to everybody out there who has content to bring their games to Nintendo Switch, because there's a market for everybody with 111 million units already sold. And we are looking to do a lot more this year as well, especially over Christmas. I think there's a market for every kind of genre and type of video games at the moment on Switch. So at the moment, we have over 7,000 video games available on Switch, and the catalog is growing every day, basically. So, yeah, simple message. If you're a developer, publisher, your game can be on Nintendo Switch. It's not too difficult. It is a closed platform, so you do have to apply to have access. But Nintendo Switch audience have a healthy appetite for new content. So, you know, if you haven't done it already, then do consider. And then you can basically go to this website called developer.nintendo.com. And anyone can actually register as a developer for Nintendo platforms. Switch does have an additional layer of application, but it's very intuitive. You can go to the website and then you can get yourself registered. And you will hear from us fairly quickly about our decision. So, kind of going into a slightly more technical side of Nintendo Switch, I will just quickly go through the Nintendo Switch specifications. So, play anywhere, anytime with anyone. Flexibility is the master word for Nintendo Switch. And this is basically really important when you're thinking about bringing a content to Nintendo Switch, because you can't just think about a situation where you're just envisioning a TV in front of you with a controller in your hands. Because if you are then taking the Switch outside or out of off the dock, it becomes portable. Resolution changes, and then the touch screen is enabled. So as developers, there are a few things you basically have to watch out for. And we are basically here to help you navigate through this slightly more complex nature of the console. So basic system specs, fairly straightforward. I'm not going to read this out, and it's all public information, so you might have seen it in the past. But interesting point, I think, is that, so Nintendo Switch screen comes with 6.2-inch liquid crystal display. So for the OLED model, it's 7-inch. But the same resolution, 1280 by 720, so it's an HD screen. But when you dock the Switch through the HDMI output, then it becomes full HD at 1080, and the maximum frame rate is 60. So that's kind of the standard mode for Switch. It has a built-in storage of 32 gigabytes, of course expandable with micro SD cards, which can come in terabytes nowadays, I think. And then, yeah, it has a wireless LAN, Bluetooth, which can also be connected to the headphones through Bluetooth now. And of course, a slot for Nintendo Switch game card. And then in terms of development environment, I will just quickly go through the architecture and the hardware. So Nintendo Switch uses a very common architecture, C++, industry standard tools. Cross-platform code is relatively easy. For example, in the past, we released Wii, which used the motion recognition sensor of the Nintendo 3DS, which had a stereoscopic 3D display. Very often, the architecture was very specific to that hardware, that it wasn't possible to just utilize something that already existed, and developers had to create something just for the Nintendo platform, which wasn't ideal in the past. But in contrast, Nintendo Switch now uses a common architecture similar to other console platforms or PC hardware. So this is obviously a much more convenient style of development environment. And again, this is one of the reasons, I think, why we have so much more support from our partners, simply because it's less hassle, less work, and it's easier to bring things to Nintendo Switch. And then when it comes to setup cost, which is also very important, especially for smaller indie studios, Nintendo Switch setup cost is very low. So all you need really is to purchase the dev kit, which you can order online once you're an approved developer on our website. And then it ships from Europe, US, and Australia, actually, and it's very inexpensive. The basic dev kit is actually only around 500 euros, and that's all you need to start developing for Nintendo. And the SDK, technical support, and certification are all available to developers free of charge. So we do not charge anything. There are no ways of paying basically fees to do anything. And the only revenue stream for us is when you release your game. That's the only way that we would charge you, basically. And then when developing on Nintendo Switch, you might want to use a third-party tool or middleware. And Nintendo has an official program for these kind of tools. So in total, our portal lists more than 60 technology and middleware products at the moment. And this, of course, includes game engines, such as Unity, Unreal, Game Maker, but also audio-video tools like Bink, Fmod, WWise, and then we are also compatible with Physics Engine, Havok, Physics, etc., and other network environments, for example, Photon or PlayFab. So becoming official middleware provider is actually also very relatively easy at the moment. So that's something we're constantly kind of looking into and expanding our library. So please speak to us if you're interested in this part as well. And then going into the more practical methods of publishing a game for Nintendo Switch. So stage one, step one, very easy. It's what I mentioned earlier. Just register yourself as a publisher. So if you are a one-man studio, then you're also a publisher because you are self-publishing. So you go to the Nintendo portal and then put your information in, and then you are already a publisher on Nintendo. And then the second step really is to then register your title under the name of your publisher. So that's, again, super simple. This is probably where it gets a bit more complicated to get age ratings. Age ratings are very important, and you cannot release a game on Nintendo Switch without an age rating. I think this is probably normal for most consoles, but this is something I cannot emphasize enough. And related to this topic, sometimes you may see online some news or things about Nintendo allowing or not allowing content on the platform. This actually fundamentally doesn't happen because we rely on international age rating bodies to determine whether a game is suitable for a certain audience or not. Nintendo Switch has a super duper robust and sophisticated system for parental guidance. You can set your Switch in the management mode, and you can set your Switch if you want to give them to your children or etc., and set the maximum age rating that the console can play. And then when you try to start an 18+ game with this parental control, it just won't start because we want to make sure that the environment for the younger audience is also safe. And this is very important for Nintendo about protecting our audience. So again, content, we rely on age rating bodies. So required for release, an age rating is very territorial in terms of, because different bodies give different age ratings in different regions. So for example, in most parts of Europe, it's PEGI. I think you're all familiar with this one, but in Germany specifically, we have something called USK, which is specific just to Germany. And of course, in the US, there's something called ESRB, and in Japan, there's something called Zero. But then, of course, Korea has its own age rating bodies, and most countries usually actually have their own age rating bodies. So if you want to release games in these countries, you must have an age rating from these bodies. However, for digital-only releases, Nintendo supports IARC, and IARC is free of charge and available immediately. So this is actually a new kind of body that is participated by all of these major age rating organizations, and they basically simplify the process for digital-only content. For physical release, if you want your game on a cartridge, it's a different story. You must have the age rating for the region that you're distributing your cartridge in. And then step 4, you need to then submit your title to lot check. What is lot check? Lot check is the name for Nintendo's certification process and its team that's involved in it. There are 3 teams of lot check. There's one in Japan, one in Germany, and one in the US. And they actually work in shifts in a way with the time difference. So they work 8 hours each. So lot check process is actually going on 24 hours. And that's possible due to the time difference. So lot check tests for platform compatibility and guidelines compliance. And platform compatibility ensures that your title will run on Switch without a problem in any situation, because Switch is unique in a way that it can have various different situations: portable, docked, switching in between, switching 5 times in 10 seconds. Some people do this. And we make sure that in lot check that every single game that's available on Nintendo Switch can handle this sort of situation. And Guideline, of course, ensures that basic standards are met when it's running on our platform. We do not want to see a game that runs at 4 frames a second on Nintendo platform, so we ensure that every single game is playable comfortably. So if you fail your testing through lot check, then you just have to resubmit for a revised version. And until it can pass, you cannot release your game on Nintendo Switch. And the very important point, and almost a plead from Nintendo, is to emphasize the point that lot check is not your QA department. It can happen. Some people do submit their games 3 times a day, and then they wait until lot check points out, this doesn't work, this is too slow. It's not meant to be like that, and you're not supposed to use lot check that way. So. Yep, and then step 5, submit digital assets and artwork. So what this essentially means is that in order for you to have a product on the eShop, we need to have your assets. We need to have the artwork, screenshots, description, etc. So basic information about your title and artwork. If it's a cartridge, again, it's a different thing because you then have to print, and the whole process of publishing is a bit different for retail. But for digital, it's fairly straightforward. And Nintendo would review your digital assets to make sure that they all fit, they're at the right format, and then we will then process through. And then the final step really is releasing. And that's probably the best bit, easiest bit as well. So for digital release, we adopt on our eShop something called agency model. Excuse me. So you set the price, date, and time, and select the territories for release at your own discretion. So Nintendo has absolutely no say in what you do. We do not tell you to do anything or set anything. Everything is up to you. And this is true to every content that's on Switch. As long as your content has age rating, and it has passed lot check, everything else is up to you. We do not say, you can do this, you can't do this. We don't do that. We don't intervene. Revenue share is industry standard, and daily download tracking and monthly sales reports are available. And we pay on monthly basis to the bank account of your choice. And actually, the daily download tracking is really, really useful. I have my partners tell me it's the best thing ever because you can literally see real time how many titles, how many units of your title has downloaded in which region on what day. So this is really great to have. And then physical release is a bit more complicated. Ordering a game cartridge from Nintendo and then assembling the physical product because Nintendo actually only produces the cartridges as an OEM order, so we do not produce the package that you see in retail. That's actually up to the publishers to do. So we essentially give you the cartridges, and then the publisher then needs to pick this up, assemble, print everything, and then distribute to the market. So for smaller publishers, it may be a bit difficult because, of course, physical distribution requires distribution partners in each region, and it gets a bit complicated on different continents. Just because you can distribute in Europe, it doesn't mean you can do exactly the same in the US. You probably have to have a partner in the US who can distribute for you. So, you may typically want to work with a distribution partner. And again, the publisher then decides the price, date, and the region for release. There's nothing for Nintendo to get involved there. And then digital sales and marketing tools. So these are the things that the publisher can do to basically promote their title that are going to be out. So you can do a demo so people can try your game before buying it. It's very effective. It's much easier to explain what the game is rather than trying to explain it in words or even trailers. Of course, the best way is for them to play your game. So that's something we recommend for some games, but not all games, because I think you've got to think about whether your game is suitable for having a demo or not. And then you can set up your game for pre-order, so consumers can purchase it before the actual release. Well, we call it pre-purchase now. So we can pre-purchase the game before it's released. And then, of course, you can have a marketing campaign around this pre-purchase period. And you can also run a price promotion, temporary discount. So again, this is something that the publisher will set by themselves, and they can now actually just self-approve the sale. And again, there's nothing Nintendo will be involved in. This is something you set and you do. And you can, of course, set your own discounts, percentage, but we also have something called owner discount, where if there are more than one games from a certain publisher, the publisher can then set the owner discount. So if you own game A, then game B becomes 50% off or something. Again, you can choose a combination, percentage, everything is up to you. And then, of course, we have something called a Nintendo Switch news channel, which is a news channel that the users can follow on device. And for those who are on the follow list, will see all the postings from this publisher about this game. So if you've got some new updates or even the sequel, you can basically communicate to all the owners of your game directly. And I think that's the gist of it. So that was a very rough overview of having a video game on Nintendo Switch. So if you have any questions, there are probably many questions that I can't answer, but I'll try my best and answer as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you so much. If anyone has questions, yeah.
Yeah, it's time to be a bad guy. Hey, my name is Artem. I'm release manager from TinyBuild. So I do have like a lot of questions because we are closely working with Nintendo. And basically, I think my big question is all other first parties currently are aiming to unify their resources, like to make one portal. And is there any plans for Nintendo to like create only one portal, not NDP, NCMS, OMAS, whatever? So.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think on behalf of all the teams in Nintendo, I'd like to actually make one point. Yes, we do have different websites, different portals, but we just have one user account to access all of them, which I think is great. This is something very new for Nintendo, and this is actually something we're very proud of, that you just need one credential to access all of them. What you've described is probably, of course, better in an ideal world. It's not something we can just do at any given moment. So for the time being, for Nintendo Switch, this is going to be how it is. But of course, we do take in consideration your comment. We hear this from other people as well, actually. So it's something that we're thinking of, but it's not something we can do for Nintendo Switch at the moment.
Hi. So one of the things that I find really interesting with the Nintendo Switch is the fact that it's the hybrid components of the console, which make it as much sofa console as a mobile console. And I can see in the past year that there's been really a development towards console type of consumption of games. More and more free games are appearing in the store listing, and the appearance of the store listing in itself is going closer to mobile gaming. So my question is, out of all the free games that we're seeing pop up more and more on Nintendo Switch, all of them have this microtransaction type of revenue model. Is there any plans in the future to include free games with ad revenue type of monetization?
Ad revenue? No. So I mean, ads on device, off device is really not something we ever think of doing. And for us, the whole experience, so it's not really just about the game. When you play a video game on Nintendo Switch, it's actually not just about the game. And this is true to Nintendo games or non-Nintendo games. And what we are very aware of is the whole experience. And this starts with thinking of wanting to play something. And then the moment they think of Nintendo console, Nintendo Switch, we're already very grateful. But that's where the experience with Nintendo starts. And we want to make this as best as possible in terms of experience that people go through. And in our opinion, they pick up Nintendo Switch, they go to eShop or whatever, go to retail, buy a game with a Nintendo Switch logo, and it could be first party or third party title. This is already the flow of the experience. And the last thing we want them to feel is that they now want to play this game that looks great, excited, and then an ad just appears on the screen. And this is going to be the moment where they are let down. And this is something we do not want to do ever. So this is one really key point for us that we would not want to do. And I think it's also true that we are always very transparent when it comes to what we are providing. I guess sometimes Nintendo video games are quite expensive, but this is because we think it's a fair price, and that much effort has gone into all of these work that we do. So the other thing we would never do is to say, oh, you can buy Zelda for $2.99. And then people think, oh, that's great, like it's on super discount. And then to tell them that, oh, okay, but to play the rest of the game, you have to watch this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this. Again, this is betraying the players. And this is something we'll never do.
Thank you. Any more questions? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for presentation. I wanted to ask, do you have any filtering process of the games? For example, I do mobile games, and if I decide to port my game to Nintendo Switch, can Nintendo say, oh, this game is not good for us? For example, it's like hyper-casual game. We don't want to see this game on our console. Or it's a self-publishing process, like I do game and I just publish it on Switch without any interruption. How it works?
So Nintendo eShop is mainly governed by algorithm. So there's actually no certain wheel from Nintendo to showcase games in a particular way. And as I mentioned earlier in my talk, we don't differentiate between big games and small games. So they are treated totally equally. And we do not say, oh, this game is a hyper-casual game. Like we don't really feel the right to categorize your content. So as long as it's there, it has age rating and past lot check, for us, it's the same. Every game is a game.
Okay, thank you. A couple of more questions. You said the revenue share is industry standard. It's like 70-30 or?
So because this is a public talk, I'm not allowed to mention the actual number because it's something that has to be under NDA. So I'll just say industry standard and you can guess.
Okay, thank you. And last question. You said you have analytics of daily downloads. Now, is it possible to make our own analytics to see how many time people spend in our game and how many times per day they play in, and check how many levels they win or lose or something like that?
So I don't think it's compatible to any form of external API. And I don't know, I don't think it's possible at the moment because that would require some sort of external tool going into what people do. And this is not something we track at the moment. So I don't think that's quite possible. But we can tell you the rough profile of who is playing your game, because this is something we see when somebody goes online. We don't see any private data, but we see that a person has gone online with Nintendo Switch. That's something we can see. And we can see the profile, age, gender, whatever that person had input in that account. That's something we can see. So that's something we could probably share for your game. But there's nothing more that kind of analyzes their behavior, if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Yeah. Just a sec.
I wish to ask is what criteria should the country's domestic market meet in order for Nintendo officially enter this market, if such criteria exist, and if you could say about them, like Nintendo go to market to officially selling consoles, games, merchandise, etc.
So criteria to enter the market. Could you elaborate on that question a bit more? So
I mean, maybe how much big this country have, or average salary of peoples in this country. I'm asking about Ukraine. I'm curious.
Okay.
Because a lot of people waiting a lot of years when Nintendo can officially come to Ukraine, because Sony
Okay.
enter, and we all the time thinking, what should Ukraine do, or what criteria?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually. I had the same question when I was in Kyiv a few years ago. So
Maybe from me.
no, it was a different
No?
person. So I think that's so at the moment we have various offices in Europe, mostly Western Europe. So actually, you are right. Nintendo Austria is, I think, the furthest east office that we have. And Eastern Europe, currently, we have a partner who distribute titles in Eastern Europe, including Poland, Czech Republic, and a few more. So I think it's actually up to that partner company whether to include Ukraine as part of their distribution region. And I mean, I can't speak for them, but I guess they are looking at potential, sale for the hardware, etc. But then again, anyone in Ukraine can just, if they have the Switch, then they're free to go onto any of the eShops, because Nintendo Switch is region free.
Yeah, I know, but a lot of gamers wish to play online game, for example, under Ukrainian flag, and buy games in digital in the national currency.
Yeah. So I think that's probably something to do with the market demand. And I can't tell you the threshold, but there's probably some sort of threshold where it, when it goes over the break even, because of course there's a cost to setting up each country. And I think in Europe, we currently have 33 different eShops in Europe. So we cater for 33 different countries. And unfortunately, maybe Ukraine isn't one of them, but there must be a line somewhere. So when Ukraine goes over that line, I guess that's when they'll think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess we have run out of questions.
Yeah, great.
Anyway,
Okay.
thanks a lot for a great talk.
No worries. And actually, I'm here until tomorrow. So if anybody wants to talk a bit more specifically, because there are some things I can't say publicly. So, if you want to speak to me, I still have some meeting slots. So look me up and let me know, and we can have a one-to-one.
Yeah, sure. Let me remind you that you can use the Pine tool to book meetings with our speakers and conference attendees. So yeah, feel free to do that. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.